All right, welcome to Math with Miss Gumbert. We're going to try this. So, welcome to my first session. All right, our goal today is to learn about fixed and variable expenses, to be able to distinguish between fixed and variable expenses. That means to be able to tell them apart, tell the difference between the two of them, and to provide examples of both fixed and variable expenses. So, let's go ahead and dive in. What is an expense? Before we can figure out what a fixed expense and a variable expense is, we have to know what an expense is to begin with. So an expense is the amount of money you spend on something. It's the amount of money you spend on anything, on groceries, a car, clothes, your house, or video games. It's just the amount of money you spend. All right? So, what is a fixed expense? Well, if we look at the word fix, we know that fix, when it's in a fixed position, that means it's in a set position. It won't change, right? Well, a fixed expense is the exact same thing. It's an expense that stays the same every week, month, or year. That means it never changes, so you always know how much money you're going to spend on these things. For example, a car. When you buy a car, you agree to pay a certain amount every single month to buy that car. It doesn't change from month to month. You're not going to pay $200 in January and then pay $3,000 in February. It's going to be the same amount every single month. Your house. Same thing with your house. When you buy a house, most people don't just buy a house up front. They make payments on it. And when you buy a house, you decide how much money your payment is going to be each month, and that doesn't change either. So it's not going to change from December to January. All right, the same price that you paid in January, if you paid $2,000 in January, you're going to pay $2,000 in February and in March and for every single month after that. Disney Plus, right? It's $6.99 a month. It never changes, right? Just because you watch more episodes doesn't mean you have to pay more. You sign up for Disney Plus, you have unlimited access, $6.99 a month, unlimited. Same thing with Netflix. It's a certain amount, right? It never changes either. Your health insurance, you decide to spend a certain amount a month to make sure that you are able to be taken care of if you're ever in an emergency, and so you pay a little bit every month, and that amount never changes. A gym membership. A lot of your parents have gym memberships. They stay the same every month as well. It isn't more expensive in April than it is in June. All right, if it's $75 in April, it'll be $75 again in June. So these are all expenses that stay the same. They never change. You always know how much they're going to be, right? Disney Plus, you know it's $6.99 a month. Your gym membership, if your parents have it, they can tell you right now how much their gym membership is because it has never changed since they've signed up. Okay, so then that brings us to what is a variable expense. Well, we know that variables change, right? And that's exactly what variable expenses do. So a variable expense is something that changes every week, month, or year. It's not something you're able to predict. For example, groceries. When you go to the grocery store, you pay a different amount every single time. Okay? You might pay $150 one week, and then you might have your aunt and uncle come into town and they like to eat a lot, so you might spend $250 the next. You never know. All right? Also with coupons and all that stuff. You might save some money one week and it might be cheaper. Clothes. You don't buy clothes every week, right? So those change. The amount of money you spend on clothes every week or month or year changes. Also, think about it. When you were little, like a baby, you were growing a lot more, so you outgrew your clothes a lot more quickly. So you had to spend more money on clothes then. Games. Game costs change all the time, right? And you're not going to buy the same game every week. Once you have the game, you have it. There's no need to buy it again. So buying new video games or buying new movies or that kind of thing, those are variable expenses because how much you spend on those every week changes. doctor visits. You don't get sick every month. So a doctor visit can't stay the same from month to month, because in January and February, you might not have been sick at all, but then come March, you're really sick. And so then you have to go to the doctor's office. So you had $0 for January and February, but then you might have, $50 in March. Your electric bill. Electricity, I don't know if your parents are anything like mine, but my parents always tell me to turn off the lights, because the more electricity we use, the higher the bill is. It's not like we can just pay one amount every month and just have unlimited electricity. You pay for what you use. So the more electricity you use, the higher your bill is going to be. And as much as we like to think it's always the same, it never is exactly. Okay, school supplies. You have different school supplies every year, right? And you don't buy school supplies every month. So that's a variable expense because it can change. You might buy school supplies in August, but then you won't buy school supplies again until, I don't know, maybe the next August, or it might be January. You never know. So that's why that's a variable expense. Next up, your sports. All right, I know a lot of y'all play sports. Those are variable expenses, because what you pay for football, you might not pay for basketball or soccer. Or you might just play, you might just only play tennis. And so you pay for tennis once, and then you're done. And so that's a one-time fee. So that's a variable expense, because it changes from month to month. It might be $0 when you're not playing, right? It costs you $0 when you're not playing football. But when football's in season, it'll cost you, I don't know, $100 or $200 to play. So here's a little chart that I made. You have your main category of expenses. And those are broken down into two categories. The first one is fixed. Those are always the same. They never change. You always know how much your fixed expenses are going to be. So for example, Netflix or Disney Plus, your car payment, your phone bill, or rent. Those are always the same. When you sign up for those services, or when you buy the car or the house, there's a set amount of money that you have to pay every month or every week or every year, and those will never change. Then you have variable expenses, and those are different every week, month, or year. Okay, like your electricity bill. The more electricity you use in 1 month, the greater your bill is. Clothing, same thing. You buy a different amount of clothes every single year, and every single month, and every single week. Think about it. When you go back to school shopping, I bet you spend a lot of money on clothing that week. But later on, after the school year started, you probably go a lot of weeks without buying new clothes. So then, those are different. Those are varied. Next, you have groceries. Those vary every single week, especially if you're in my family. Right? You might have to buy a lot of groceries one week, but then you're all stocked up, so you don't have to buy as many next week. And finally, you have school supplies. Right? You buy different kinds of school supplies every year. So they change. The amount of money that you spend on those school supplies changes. All right, so let's practice. I'm going to tell you something that you purchase or you spend money on, and you're going to answer if it is a fixed or a variable expense. So a haircut. It is a variable expense because it doesn't happen every single week or every single month. It happens at different times. So even though the haircut might always cost the same, it doesn't happen on a consistent basis or on a consistent time. It's not like every single week you go get a haircut, right? That'd be a little ridiculous. A field trip. That's a variable expense. You don't go on a field trip every week or every month. So those change, and it depending on the field trip, the cost changes too, right? So the field trip that we had for the zoo, that was a lot less than how much our field trip was going to be for going to camp, because camp we stayed overnight, so it was a lot more. So the cost and the time that you have to pay those changes. What about a car payment? That's a fixed expense. Remember, when you buy a car, They tell you you're going to pay this amount every single month until you've paid off your car. So that's a fixed expense. That amount never changes. A doctor visit. That's a variable expense, right? Depending on what you're going to the doctor for, it might cost more or it might cost less. And you don't go to the doctor every week or every month. You only go to the doctor really when you need to. So you can't ever predict when you're going to have that expense or how much it's going to be. A phone bill. That's a fixed expense. You call up your phone service provider and you say, hey, I want this many minutes and whatever. And they say, okay, it's this much a month and it will never change. So that's a fixed expense, right? Every single month that you're going to pay to have that service and you're going to pay a certain amount every single month. A cable bill. Same thing. It's a fixed expense, right? You're paying someone to provide you with the service of being able to watch different channels on TV. So you buy a package and they tell you, okay, this package is $40 a month. And so you pay $40 every single month to get those certain channels that you want to watch. A new video game. That's a variable expense, right? You don't know how much the video game is going to cost, and you don't buy them every week or every month, right? You just buy them when they come out, or maybe you only get them for your birthday or for a special occasion. So that's not something that you can predict happening every single month or every single year or every single week. A car repair. Let's say your mom's car broke down. That's a variable expense because you don't know how much it's going to cost, and it doesn't happen every month, or I hope it doesn't happen every month. So the cost changes, right? It's not something that you plan for. You don't plan for your car to break down. So that's a variable expense because the amount changes and the time changes too. Rent. That's a fixed expense. So when I was in college, I lived in an apartment complex and they told me, it's this much money every month to live here. And so I had to pay that much every single month to live there. And so I knew how much it was and when it was due every single month. It was a fixed expense. What about a house payment? Same thing, it's a fixed expense. When you buy a house, they tell you, okay, in order for you to purchase this house, you have to make payments on it every month of this amount. And that amount doesn't change, and it's every month that you make those. Okay, you never get a free month. You never get to skip months. So it happens every month, that's fixed, and the amount's fixed. What about a birthday party? Let's say, you're turning 10 or you're turning 11 and you're throwing a birthday party. What's that expense? That's a variable expense, right? Depending on what you're doing, how many people you're inviting, all of that kind of stuff. It changes. You can't predict that. And you don't have a birthday party every month, right? That only happens once a year. So the birthday party expense is variable because it changes from month to month. The months that it's not your birthday, it's $0. But the month that it is your birthday, it might be a lot more. Probably is a lot more. An internet bill. It's a fixed expense. The same thing with the phone bill and the cable bill. The internet providers do the exact same thing. They say, okay, for this internet, it's this much a month. And it's due, so you pay that much money every single month, the same amount, to get internet. What about gas for my car? Well, that's a variable expense because it depends how much I drive, and it depends, the gas prices change. So that's a variable expense because we don't know the cost, and we don't know how often I'm going to have to fill up my car with gas, right? What about an Xbox Live subscription? That's a fixed expense. You pay X amount of money a month, a certain amount of money every month to be able to have Xbox Live, and it doesn't change. Right? You know that every single month you have to pay a certain amount of money to have your Xbox Live subscription. Now, you might not have known that, but your parents do. And they pay it so that you can have Xbox Live. All right, well, that's the end. I hope that you were able to understand a little bit more about fixed and variable expenses. And thanks for watching. I'm proud of y'all. Keep learning. And I hope I'll see you soon.